All right, so I'm gonna go over the cell membrane and homeostasis, and hopefully I can squeeze cell transport into this video. If not, I'll just make another one for you to watch and review cell transport. Okay, so the cell membrane. Remember that our cell membrane is composed of lipids and proteins. It's a double layer of phospholipids. Remember, lipids are fats. They're made up of glycerol and fatty acids. Proteins are made up of amino acids, okay, and they can also act as enzymes. But in our cell membrane, they're very important because they allow things to go in and out. Our cell membrane controls everything that goes in and out, and that's why those proteins are very important. Lipid soluble substances go through the cell membrane very, very easy, like oxygen, CO2, and steroids. They go through our membranes very easy, okay. Some molecules require help to go through the cell membrane, and those are water soluble substances like water, ion, glucose, amino acids. Okay, and this is where those proteins that I just mentioned are come in and help these things. Okay, they're very handy when it comes to helping things go in and out, especially if they're water soluble. Okay, so again, the phospholipid bilayer or the cell membrane is made up of two layers of phospholipids. The inside over is called a hydrophobic tail because they don't like water, and the little circles on the top, okay, this right here, they're called the hydrophilic heads because they don't mind water, they don't fear it, they're okay if water's touching them. Okay, again, one is water loving, the other is water hating, okay, or a hater. Okay, the proteins in the cell membrane, they act as receptors. They act as channels or carriers, and they allow different things to go through the cell membranes, specifically ions or water soluble. Okay, another important part of the cell membrane is cholesterol. Okay, cholesterol stabilizes the cell membrane. It allows it to keep the shape that it has. And cholesterol, one thing that's very important is that it's only found in animal cells. Okay, you're never going to find cholesterol in plant cells. So if you're ever buying corn oil, okay, and it says that it doesn't have cholesterol, well, yeah, we know that. There's no way that corn can have cholesterol in it. So there's no way there can be cholesterol in corn oil, right? So again, this is the cell membrane. The cell membrane, remember that it controls what goes in and out of the cell, and it's made up of lipids and proteins. It has a little bit of carbohydrates on the surface, but the lipids and the proteins are what are responsible for what goes in and out. Okay, protein channels, protein carriers, and that phospholipid bilayers. Okay, can everything go in? No, it can't because it's semi-permeable. Semi-permeable meaning only certain things can go in. Okay, all right. So homeostasis. So the cell membrane is very important when it comes to homeostasis because it allows things to go in and out, and it allows things to be in equilibrium. Okay, which is what homeostasis is. It's just the ability of our bodies or any cell, any organism to maintain equilibrium. Okay, with its internal environment when dealing with external factors or external changes. So your body, believe it or not, is working 24/7 to maintain a constant temperature inside of you regardless of how cold or how hot it is outside. And that's what homeostasis is, and that's where your cell membrane comes into play as well. Okay, it's very, very important. There's two ways that our body keeps us at equilibrium, and one of them is called a negative feedback mechanisms. This is where your body responds to stimuli. Okay, think of a thermostat in your house or in the classroom, right? You set it at 70. If it goes too high, if it gets too hot, then the AC turns on to bring it to 70, right? If it gets too cold, then the heater goes on to bring it to 70. It always wants to stay at a stable number or at equilibrium. Okay, so it tends to stabilize the system, just like in our bodies. If it gets too cold outside, our body wants to keep warm, right? So that's negative feedback. Okay, when you go away from from equilibrium, your body or the organism always tries to come back. Positive feedback mechanism is the opposite, right? This happens in pregnancy when contractions are happening, right? So what happens is the body of the female recognizes that they're going into labor, so they kick it into overdrive. They don't want to stay at equilibrium. They actually want to produce more different hormones, different things that are going to cause this birth to happen. Okay, this is just one example, but this is positive feedback. This is going away from the equilibrium. Okay, increasing the output. You're increasing it, going away from that equilibrium. So instead of staying at equilibrium or bringing it back, you're increasing it. That's positive feedback, and that's how we maintain homeostasis, or just an example of how we maintain homeostasis in our bodies. Okay, now cell transport is also how this homeostasis process happens. Okay, and this is just how things get transported in our cells. Okay, there's two ways of things being transported in our cells. One being passive transport, which requires no energy. Passive, right? You're sitting in the couch, you're being passive, you don't use energy. And this is just examples are osmosis, diffusion, facilitated diffusion. We have a thinking map that you should have in your notebook, so look at that. Okay, but this is just passive transport, just moving from high concentration to low concentration. Okay, no energy is required. Diffusion, the first example, is just moving particles from an area of high concentration to low concentration, and it does not require energy. This has nothing to do with water. Okay, diffusion is just any type of particle, gas, ion, any type of liquid, not just water. Okay, but when we're talking about water, okay, when we're being very specific and we're talking about the diffusion of water, okay, then we call that osmosis. Okay, and this is the diffusion of water from high to low concentration. We talked about 3 different solutions that a cell can be in, and water can go in and out of the cell, right? We said we call these solutions hypertonic solution, isotonic solution, and hypotonic solution. The first one we talked about was hypotonic solution, and this is where the cell actually the water goes into the cell, okay? Because there's less water inside the cell, hypotonic, right? So the hypotonic solution, when you put a cell in hypotonic solution, water is going to rush into the cell, and it can actually make the cell start swelling up, right? So if a cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, the cells will start swelling up, just like the example that we have with the egg in our lab. Okay. The other type of solution is hypertonic solution. When you put a cell in a hypertonic solution, the cell is going to lose water because there's more water inside the cell than outside the cell. So again, the cell is trying to maintain equilibrium. So it's going to push the water out, and it's actually going to shrink, and it could actually denature or die because it shrinks so much, right? And that's what happens when you drink a lot of salt water. There's more water inside of your cells than outside if you start drinking ocean water. So your cells start pushing all that water out, so you're going to dehydrate more, and you're going to feel more thirsty because you're losing water, okay? So you're actually shrinking your cells. Over here, this cells can actually, on hypotonic, these cells can actually swell up so much that they can explode, right? So hypotonic, hypertonic. The other solution is isotonic. You can put a cell in an isotonic solution where the amount of water outside the cell is the same as inside the cell. Water is still going to go in and out, but it's going to go in and out at the same rate, so the cell is not going to change. Okay, so the question is there water movement? Yes, I think I just answered that. But yes, there is water movement, but the water movement is going to be identical. Okay, what goes in comes out, no change. Okay, the other one, passive diffusion. We're still talking about passive transport, no energy is needed. Okay, this is facilitated diffusion. This is where substances cross a membrane with the help of proteins, carrier proteins. Okay, things go in and out of the cell. These proteins help these substances to go in and out. And again, they're going from high concentration to low concentration, so no energy is needed. Okay, all right. So that's passive transport. Diffusion, osmosis, facilitated diffusion. Osmosis involves 3 types of solutions. Remember that: hypotonic, cells swell up; hypertonic, cells shrink; isotonic, where the cell stays the same, but water still goes in and out at the same rate. The other type of transport is active transport. This is the movement of particles going across the membrane, but it goes from low concentration to high concentration. And the examples are the ion or protein pump, okay, and endocytosis, exocytosis. And we looked at different examples of this, but the protein pump uses ATP, which is made during cellular respiration. Remember that in the mitochondria. And it uses that to move sodium and potassium across the membrane from low concentration to high concentration. And it uses a lot of energy, okay, because you're moving things across a gradient, okay, concentration gradient. Now, endocytosis is another way that things or bulky substances come into the cell, okay, endo meaning in. So endocytosis, you're bringing things in through the cell membrane. They attach to the cell membrane. Then the cell membrane actually folds and it forms a vesicle. And then that vesicle goes into the cell and brings whatever needs to come into the cell. These substances are too big, for them to go through the cell membrane. So they have to get engulfed in order to come in. The other way, it's actually exocytosis, which is the same thing. Endocytosis goes this way, okay, but if we're looking at exocytosis, it just goes the other way, okay. It's just the opposite of endocytosis. Instead of bringing things in, you're taking things out, and of course it's going to require tons of energy, ATP, but that's what exocytosis is, okay. So this is cell transport. Let me show you, in case you don't have your thinking map. Remember that cell transport, okay? Cell transport could be passive, okay? Or it could be active, okay? If it's active, it requires energy, okay? No energy. I'm doing this really fast, but you should have this in your notes. Diffusion, okay? From high to low, everything but water. If we're talking about water, then we're talking about osmosis, okay? And facilitated diffusion, okay? And that facilitated diffusion involves protein. Osmosis has to do with hypotonic solutions, where cells swell up, hypertonic, okay, where cells shrink, and isotonic, where the cells don't change. Active has to do with protein pumps, and they require ATP to go from low to high, okay? We also have endo and exocytosis. This is how objects that cannot go through the cell membrane actually go in and out of the cell membrane. Again, make sure you go through your notes, make sure you understand this. I know the video went a little longer than I expected, but I was able to put everything together. Okay, I hope this helped. Let me know if you need anything else.